Important. Okay, we're recording, and Dr. Hamerlinck, thanks for joining us. If you wouldn't mind, could you just give us a real so folks have read a little bit about your work and the summer program with the department, but would you mind giving us a little bit of just a quick micro introduction to kind of who you are?
Oh, to myself, of course.
Yeah.
Talk about myself forever. Yes, my name is Dr. Hamerlinck, or Gabby, if you are feeling brave. I always tell my students that they can call me Gabby if they want to, but they're going to get a lot further if they're asking me for things like extra credit or extensions if they call me Dr. Hamerlinck. So I am a faculty member. I'm teaching faculty in the Department of Geography, and that means that I spend the majority of my day in classrooms with all of you. I do still do a little bit of research. So my background academically is in biology and math. I got my undergrad degrees at a very small school called Augsburg College, which is now called Augsburg University. It is in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. And after I finished there, getting my degrees in math and biology, I moved south all the way to Iowa to get my PhD. But I thought I shouldn't take any sort of a break, and I just went right from my bachelor's degree into a PhD program at 21. It was fun. And so I was in the integrated biology PhD program there, where my focus was on bugs, focusing on host parasitoid interactions. And I also completed a college teaching certificate when I was there, essentially taking a bunch of night classes to learn how to effectively teach all of you in the classroom. Then I went to this thing called a postdoc position. It is a temporary position once you finish your PhD, just to get a little bit more experience so that you can actually enter the job market successfully as a faculty candidate. And so I moved north again to Wisconsin. We're getting a theme here from the Midwest. And I worked with a nonprofit education organization called BioQuest Curriculum Consortium on an NSF, or a National Science Foundation funded project called CUBES, the Quantitative Undergraduate Biology Education and Synthesis Project, which is a mouthful. And in there, I trained college faculty from across the country how to bring more math into the biology curriculum. So training all of your professors. And then I moved actually south to Florida for my second postdoc, which was in my department, working with one of my current colleagues at the CDC Southeastern Center of Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases, which is here on campus, housed in the Emerging Pathogens Institute. And after a year as a postdoc here, I applied for and have successfully got a faculty position. And so I've been in this position since 2019. Yeah, that's me. And in my spare time, I like hanging out with my dogs.
Don't we all? So questions from the group? Yes.
You changed, like, from starting from what you thought you were going to do to what you ended up doing?
Great question. So I always was really interested in teaching. I went into grad school thinking that I wanted to go back to a small liberal arts school, just like I had graduated from, where the class sizes were like no more than this ever. And that had been my intention. So I got my teaching certificate. My advisor was very supportive of me wanting to teach, which can be really difficult to find an advisor that's like that. Usually they want to train mini-me's for like, yes, I'm going to go to a research institution and only do research and blah, blah, blah. And so that part of my trajectory didn't change, like focusing on the teaching side of things, but the content did. So obviously biology, math, and now I'm in a geography department. It's a little bit different, circular path there. But I still do host parasitoid or host parasite modeling. So I still do mathematical and statistical modeling. So I think broadly speaking, I had a little bit of a deviation in my path. I never thought I'd wind up at a big research institution like Florida. But the teaching that I'm able to do in my department, the plug for geography, our class sizes in general are about this size. And I still teach a lot of the basic biology and virology for diseases now, because I'm in the medical geography group within our department. I think like content wise, still fairly similar, but lots of extra resources at UF, which is fantastic.
So I'm a math major currently, and I was just wondering, like, at the ecology and math program that you did, like, how did you like apply mathematics to the study?
That's the one at Michigan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic program. It's still going. It looks a little different than when I went, but you should look into it. It is, that one was a 7-week program. We spent the first 3 weeks spending 3-week-long classes essentially, where we're in a room from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. learning math. So we did adaptive dynamics, we did game theory, maximum likelihood analyses for estimation, and then we took all those skills and applied it to our field ecology research piece, which was the latter 4 weeks of that term. It was great. Backwoods of Michigan, it's really fun.
So I was reading your bio before class, and I saw that you should.
Intimidating.
It's like shifted from wanting to be a veterinarian to being a biologist. I was wondering if there's like a specific event that made you do that, or it's like a gradual.
I mean, I wanted to be a vet when I was in like early elementary school, I think. So that was a while ago. And that was because I had pets. And I really wanted to, that was what I thought that vets did, like just hang out with all the really cool animals. In reality, that's perhaps not what they do. They do still get to do that, but they also have to deal with people. Not my favorite thing. Also why I never wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor. And then you have to deal with the sad parts of it too. And I didn't think that I could emotionally handle that. So yeah. In the back.
Which one of your relationship has impacted your development the most?
The trips that I took for fun or the trips that I did for work related things. So my family is not from this country. And so I grew up leaving the country ghosting family quite a bit. And I know that's a really privileged upbringing that I had, but being able to travel in that regard to see a family, and then my parents really prioritized that for me. So I played soccer in Europe before I started grad school. I've gone on other trips. I'm trying to see the world to get these different perspectives. I think that's really, really valuable. And I did 2 study abroad programs when I was in college, also highly recommend. And it just sort of opens your eyes to how other people, other cultures think and what their values are, and how you can sort of reflect on your own biases and your own beliefs, your own experiences, and see how they are either challenged or strengthened or changed when you have those experiences elsewhere. And whether or not that's a trip out of the country, or it's just coming to visit a class where you're interacting with people who aren't in the exact same major that you are, I think that is just open yourself up to those sorts of experiences. But I can't like pinpoint one specific thing. But I definitely I was super lucky to be able to travel out of the country for both class related purposes and for trips for fun and to see family. And I think it's really important. If you can, you should try.
This is kind of related to what you're just saying, but like, in your advice that you went to Chile.
Yep.
Did that kind of influence like you wanting to go the geography, or was that something else?
No, not really. My family's from Chile, so that's why I went so much.
Like, the different experience that you had there.
So nothing really pointed me to geography, except that I was at my house one day and I got a text from a colleague that says, hey, I have a friend staying at my house. She's looking for a postdoc. Send me your CV. And so I did. And then I got a job here in the geography department. So it was really that networking piece that was how I wound up in geography. And then I realized how similar what the content of what I would be doing as faculty would be to my academic training. And so I stuck around, and they wanted me to stick around.
Can you talk about like a specific project or a study that you did that you consider to be your most impactful?
Yep. Yeah, sure. So impact in the sciences means something a little bit different because all of the journals that we publish in have something called an impact factor. And so there's this mindset in this academic publishing world that if you want to have all of your research go into a journal that has a really high impact factor, it just means that a lot of people read it, a lot of people are citing from it, etc. That is not my definition of impact, just to put that out there. The biggest impact for me professionally, I think, was doing some field work when I was in grad school. It really forced me to confront the logistics of looking kind of like a serial killer doing my field work. I was stopped by the police a lot of times. I would go into the woods with 5-gallon buckets and a pickaxe and a shovel. And then I would come back out of the woods very, very dirty. I'm carrying those same things and a whole bunch of soil. And so I just had the police called on me a lot to explain what I was doing. And so figuring out how to present like an elevator pitch of here's why I look a little weird and I was by myself as well. So 22, 23, still quite young. Not as super confident, talking to border control or to the police in the middle of nowhere in Michigan or Indiana or Washington, etc. So I think personally and professionally that those sorts of projects, those sorts of trips were really crucial to my becoming who I am. Good question. So
Just really quickly say, we talk a lot about being able to present your research to different audiences.
Yeah.
Law enforcement is an audience I've never considered before. That's a new one to me.
Yeah, I had a good one with border control in Arizona. And I have a fairly poor sense of direction, which is great being in a geography department. So I brought my passport just in case. Because who knows when you're going to take a wrong turn. I was going off these GPS coordinates that were 30 years old, trying to find like one tree, all the soil around it to dig up all the bugs. And so the back of my rental car, which had Nevada plates, I had a Minnesota driver's license, University of Iowa ID badge. The back of my rental car was completely covered in painter's plastic so that my car wouldn't get dirty, right? Just trying to not get fees from the rental agency. 15 5-gallon buckets full of soil, shovels, etc. in my car, and I got stopped. And I thought, the dog aspect here, because dogs are really cute. My first thought was to comment on the really adorable drug dog that was coming to search my car, and don't do that. Yeah. So yeah, presenting, you can't just say, oh, I'm looking for bugs. That doesn't go over so well. So you have to have that sort of 30-second to a minute-long elevator pitch of what you're doing. And yes, I do have all the appropriate USDA permits and etc. So sometimes.
Are there any specific traits for skills that are favored in research applicants? Is there anything that makes one applicant stand out from you?
It depends on the research that you're applying for, I would say. So I think it's really important to be confident in yourself. You have the ability to do it all. It might be a longer learning process for you, right? Some of those skills and techniques, if you haven't taken a class and if you're not doing it every day, it's more difficult to get over that sort of activation energy piece. But if you have that mindset of, yes, it's called the growth mindset in educational literature, but it's the idea that, yes, you can learn this. You might not be an expert in it right this second, but yes, you have the ability to learn it and apply it in a successful way. And so I think it's more of those like personal skills that you might have rather than content expertise that makes you a really attractive candidate for any sort of research program. Obviously, if you have some of that content knowledge, that's a plus, but it's being able to learn, it's being able to take feedback in a constructive way, it's being able to work as a member of a team collaboratively, sticking to deadlines, very important. Things like that, I think, are really, really important skills that you can highlight in those intro emails that you might send to a faculty member or include in a cover letter in an application. Also being able to say, I don't know, but perhaps not using those words. So if you ever take a class from me, you will likely hear me say, that's a fantastic question. I'm not quite sure the answer to it yet, but I will look into it and get back to you. more of a professional way of saying I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay. I guess going off, what she said, what were like the first steps you took towards getting involved with research? Because it can be very hard when you don't already have the background experience.
Absolutely. So I got started a little late in the game. I did my first research experience as a senior in college, after I had sort of made up my mind that yes, I'm going to go get a graduate degree. And I just thought that I would be a much more competitive candidate for grad school had I completed some undergrad research. But I also went to a really small school that had about 1,500 students at it. So the opportunities aren't as bountiful as they are here at UF. So my first research experience was doing mathematical modeling of the 2009 H1N1 flu outbreak. Because that research experience was in 2009 and 2010. And so I reached out to my advisors, who are also my mentors, to ask about the potential for a project like this, or just any sort of research experience. And it can be like here, I always tell my students who are trying to find those experiences that it's super awkward to send those first emails, the cold emails that say, hi, my name is, I am a student of like your 500 students that you might have this semester. I'm interested in this opportunity, or are you accepting students? And you will likely not get a response back. That's just, we get hundreds of emails every single day, and it's really difficult for us as faculty members to respond to each and every single one. So if you don't hear back from us, send a follow-up email, just checking in, wanted to see if you saw that. Don't send it the next day, send it like a week and a half later. Just to check up and check in again, and it keeps you on our radar.
This is kind of going back like the border patrol thing.
Oh, sure.
When
It's my best research story.
you're in situations like that, where you have to explain like what you do to other people, like how do you go about that? Do you ever feel like you need to justify what you're doing?
No, I don't think that you have to justify what you're doing. I just think that you have to, all of us, I would say, at this level, have some sort of elevator pitch to a wide variety of audiences, right? So I can come in and talk to all of you who have no interest or background perhaps in like the host parasitoid interactions that I study in particular. Maybe you've never heard of African swine fever, which is the disease that I work on most commonly, but I can still talk to you about that research in terms that you understand, that gets the point across. But I can also have that same conversation with experts in that field. And so just being able to read your audience, read the room a little bit, it's sort of a performance art, and have it in your back pocket. Yeah. Yes.
Not to bring it back to studying abroad, but I had another question.
Absolutely.
I'm hopefully going to apply to be a research assistant in the fall, but I'm also studying abroad this summer. Do you think, as a researcher yourself, that would be seeing the gap in my resume, or is like a diverse perspective?
Nope.
Something?
Get out, do all the things. If you are accepted into that position, make it very clear to the PI or the principal investigator of that lab that you will be abroad over the summer, that this is a really important thing to you. Just sort of be clear in that communication, because if they're expecting certain things from you over the summer, like doing those trainings or reading some of the literature, the background before you hit the ground running in the fall semester, just clear communication. We always appreciate that. Everybody should always appreciate that. But yes, where are you going?
Oh, it's Toronto. I've never left the countries.
Oh, that'll be a fantastic trip.
Wait, so I was reading in your bio that you have always been interested in biology since you were very young. So I was just wondering if like you faced any particular challenges during college or your early career years that made it difficult to continue.
Absolutely. We probably all have some sort of these same type of experiences. Mine was my soccer coach in high school. He was also my biology teacher. Someone that I looked up to told me that I was never going to make it in biology, that I shouldn't spend my time studying science because that's not what girls do. Yeah, I'm glad that you're having the same reaction that I did. And I think that I am just so stubborn that I use that as a, well, of course I'm going to succeed in spite of you. And so I we've likely all had some similar sort of experience, and that really sucks. But just knowing that you can do it, you have all the resources at your fingertips here in college at UF to do everything that you put your mind to. And so forming that support system, I had great family support for pursuing my goals. I also found mentors that were not in my field. They're still my mentors. I go back to my undergrad institution. I try to every year. COVID threw a wrench in the plans, but to talk to those students as someone who overcame some of those challenges, to say, yes, you can absolutely do it. You should be talking to all of these people and just forming that support system, whether or not it's like content support, right? Some of your professors that are experts in your field of study, but also just those people who are always going to be your cheerleaders. I think that's really, really crucial. And one of the biggest reasons why I was able to be successful. And I 100% wrote a snarky letter to that teacher that I had in college when I graduated with my PhD and said that I succeeded in spite of her. So,
Wow, cool.
yeah, I mean, as someone who now educates younger people, I think that's just, it's terrible.
Yeah.
You should never say that to a student.
Yeah.
All of you can be successful.
It's kind of a small thing, so she was your biology teacher and soccer coach,
Uh-huh.
and she's a woman, and she told you you can't make it in biology.
Yeah, right. I know. My mom that just thought that she was just like the person that changed my mind. Like, no. And when I told her when I graduated from my PhD, she was just up in arms and she was like, I'm gonna go back to this teacher and say, like, how could you say this?
Yeah.
I got it taken care of, Mom.
How do you engage with and mentor the students?
It varies depending on what that student wants to do, right? They don't all want to be teaching faculty at a big school. And so the support that I can give is different for lots of different students. If I have a student that's doing research with me, I'm going to mentor them in a slightly different way than if it's a student who's just taking one of my classes to fulfill their gen ed requirements and they want some like advice. And so it's meeting the student where you are, because I want all of you to be successful in whatever you might choose to do, whether or not that's providing resources or connecting you with other people, or perhaps putting a tweet out into the internet, asking for, someone that I know professionally or through social media, do you know somebody who knows somebody that I can get in touch with for the student? That's happened, right? So now I've developed contacts at the CDC and at the WHO so that students who are interested in diseases and that career path, which I know nothing about, I can connect them with somebody who can give them better information than I can.
After reading your biography, you have a lot of experience being taught, teaching yourself and teaching others. At what point could you look around and feel confident in where you were in your career or your research, and at what moment or position were you at?
Yeah, so there's this thing called imposter syndrome that exists. It never goes away, ever. I don't know of anybody who has overcome imposter syndrome in any way, shape, or form, but it's just sort of coming to terms with it. So I think that I'm good at my job, and I have the things on my CV that suggest that I'm good at my job, right? Teaching awards or service awards, etc. But I will still always say that I am not yet there. I think that, I do think that I'm good at my job, but there's always room for improvement. And so there's not that like one moment that the, life-changing light bulb moment. And I would go so far as to bet that the majority of your professors would say the same thing, because we always face imposter syndrome.
Real quick flip side to that, as a student, I feel like a lot of students say to me, I don't feel like I can get started in research because I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I don't really know, but consider the fact that most experts question their own expertise and
100%.
feel a little more confident about just diving into something you don't fully understand.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know geography, but now I teach it.
I want to throw in a quick question from the online group, from
Sure.
the pre-submitted questions. Leah Kozakovich wanted to know, what is the most bizarre finding you have ever discovered in the course of your research.
I found some new species.
Wow.
That was exciting. So they're tiny, tiny little parasitic wasps. And I learned that you can't just name them after whatever you want. There's like rules in place now you have to go through. So the species that I found, they are cryptic species, which means that they look almost identical to their sister species, but they are genetically unique. So I did all the genetics work during my PhD for these species, and then my PhD advisor and another group of like taxonomists actually got to name it. But it finally got named a few years ago, which is very exciting. That's probably the coolest thing.
Yeah.
My claim to fame. Anybody else?
Good question.
Something super nerdy. There's a whole bunch of so the joke that I make in all of my classes is that scientists are super creative when it comes to naming things, especially like Latin species names, and a lot of them are named after a person, or now we're starting to get some of those pop culture references, like there's some bugs that are named after Harry Potter things, which I think is fantastic. Big fan. And so I don't know what I would have named it because I'm not a taxonomist. And no one really studies them. There's just a very small group of us that study these bugs. So I don't know. I never allowed myself to think about what cool name I could have given it. It's named after a gin now, though.
Anyone else?
So you said you're in like geography department, right? But I don't know, the way you've been like talking about your research and stuff seems really like biology based.
Absolutely.
So I'm just like wondering how that geography seems to that, or like
Yeah.
how that connects.
I'll give you my pitch for why you should all be geography majors. So geography as a field is traditionally thought of as a social science, right? Places, state names, capitals. We are a little bit more than that. So I'm in the medical geography unit in our department, which means that I teach classes that are called things like the next pandemic or people in plague, global patterns of sexually transmitted infections. Yeah, so you can see how they're all disease focused, but we ask the same biology sort of questions, but with a spatial twist. So we can ask questions about the patterns of disease spread or the spread of health issues across landscapes and through populations. And if you become a geography major, you will get the benefit of all of those critical tracking classes that you would need to be a successful candidate to medical school, and have class sizes all about this size instead of your intro bios, which are hundreds. I can't even imagine teaching that. Yeah, yes, biology focus, that's my academic training, so it's always going to be a little present, but that spatial twist on all of the biological questions that we can ask.
How do you see the field of geography evolving?
Oof, great question. So I sit on a few national and regional committees focused on DEI efforts. And so my hope is that we become a little bit more representative in the field. A lot of academic fields and how they're presented to us in an academic context are traditionally dominated by white male authors. And that's not indicative of what the current state of the research is. Like, we have a really diverse set of individuals who are doing this research, who are participating, and we study so many different cultures and groups of people that I'm hopeful that in the way that we present this information to students, it just becomes more representative of the true nature of the field. Yeah.
We'll go to another question from the list while people are thinking. It's a good one for anybody who may be thinking about higher ed careers in the future, from Juanita Echeverry. Can you describe what a typical workday looks like?
Yes, emails. So many emails. I got here before 8 this morning and I was answering emails until I left to run over here, and I haven't even really started on prepping for my day. So Mondays are really email heavy. We do a lot of paperwork. I'm really pitching this as a great career path. But I do have time blocked off in my weekly schedule for this is my dedicated research time. Here is my dedicated teaching prep time. So lots of meetings, lots of emails. And then because I'm teaching faculty, the majority of my time, 75% of my job is teaching. So I teach 3 classes in the fall and the spring, and then 2 classes over the summer, which means that I have about 9 contact hours with students every week, which also translates to about 6 hours of office hours every week. And then I have TAs that I have to coordinate with. So I just had that meeting this morning as well. And so it's my calendar looks a little intense, but everybody's calendar will eventually end up looking like that. So yes, lots of emails, lots of paperwork.
You still take those like research trips like out of the state, or none?
Not necessarily in the same way. I don't do field work anymore. Although I would love to. I just don't have any funded projects like that right now. The research trips that I do are more for like working group stuff and going to conferences. So in the coming couple of months, I have a trip to California to work with a group of mathematicians on African swine fever, which is a tick-borne disease. I'm going to Philadelphia or Indianapolis, I can't remember which one, to work with a national STEM education reform working group that I'm part of. I just participated in an NSF panel review for grant proposals. So it's a little bit all over the place, but I wish that I could go out in the field and just like roll around in the dirt for a week again. It's not in the cards right now.
So you said you wanted to go into the field. Is there like any location that you really would be researching?
Okay, so I study this tick-borne disease called African swine fever. These ticks are so cool. They're soft-body ticks, and so when this is a little gross, sorry everybody, but when they haven't fed, they look like little raisins, and when they have fed, they look like grapes, and they get so full of their blood meal that their little legs can't touch the ground. They live in warthog burrows, and so in order to collect them, you get lower down into a warthog burrow with a little like dental vacuum essentially, and you just vacuum up all the ticks that are in there. I would love to do that. 100%. I mean, someone would have to go in and check that there are no snakes in the warthog burrow because I can't handle snakes. But yes, that is, I want to do that so badly. But other than that, no. Yeah.
Do you have like any going back to like research? I want to do research, but I'm a little worried about like getting overwhelmed and kind of like getting really stuck into it and not being able to do anything else.
Sure, like have a life. Yeah. So I just think it's really important to develop these time management skills, right? One of those other personal skills, good life skill to have. And setting boundaries, right? When I first started here, we were pre-pandemic, but just I was here for like a semester and then we went online. And it was really difficult for me to stop working because I thought that all of you as students needed so much support, right? So I was responding to emails at 2 o'clock in the morning. My husband hated it. And so he and I sat down and he was like, you're doing too much. You can't, this is not sustainable for you. You have to set some boundaries. And so now I try to have better work-life boundaries and balance, where if I go home, I'm home. I set aside time in my day for this is my research time, this is my teaching prep time, I have to be in class for this period of time, things like that. And then I try to do my best to stick to those boundaries. There are some points in time where it just doesn't happen, right? Finals week, you might be done with your finals on Friday, but we have to grade all of those exams and those papers and then submit our grades to the university by noon on Monday, which means that we're going to have to work on that weekend. But I can plan for that. So it is possible. There will be days that you'll be overwhelmed. There could be weeks that you'd be overwhelmed, but it's still totally feasible. Just making sure that you set those boundaries, asking what the expectations are in the lab that you're working in. you know, I'm here, I'm signing up for research for credit. That means that I'm going to be devoting X amount of hours per week on average to this project. If you need to do a little bit more in 1 week or a little bit less in the next week, that's okay, having that flexibility, but don't spend 3 times the amount of time on that project. And just, if you are feeling overwhelmed, there are support systems in place. Like, let your PI know that, hey, this week I've got 3 exams for my other classes. That is your priority, right? You're here to get your bachelor's degree. That's your priority. And just making that clear, that active line of communication, I think, is really important. A good question.
Good one. Another online question. Cody Emerson is interested in how your research has impacted your understanding of COVID-19 and what is the role of medical geography scholars and experts during pandemics?
Oh, man. So one of our labs in MedGeo is a BSL 3, which means BSL stands for Biosafety Level 3. It's if you've watched any like zombie TV show or movie about diseases, it's the lab where you have to be in a full suit. Like if you got to pee, it's going to take you 30 minutes to get undressed and then redressed into your protective suits, be fully decontaminated and so on. Do we have one of those labs? They study COVID. Or the pathogen that causes COVID, we're going to be specific. Also, COVID's an acronym. I'm just grading stuff for COVID right now. So COVID's an acronym, it's always capitalized. And so we study these pieces, and I think it's, you know, where my colleagues in MedGeo, which is perhaps not where you would expect to find this research, they are doing this groundbreaking work. You know, we had this laboratory space here on campus already. That meant that when this pandemic started, that lab was able to quickly transition to, instead of working with anthrax and brucellosis specifically, they were able to bring in COVID and start researching it at this really high level capacity. So it has, going through the pandemic, teaching in a class called The Next Pandemic. There's a lot of interest in my class now, which is fantastic, job security for me. But it's, you know, we're still teaching the nature of science. I think we're not, in my class at least, I'm not presenting the cutting edge stuff that's just being published like today. More about how we handle as scientists, as medical professionals, how we handle when a new disease pops up in our population. For my purposes, at least. Yeah.
Well, these people that are like in like hazmat suits or whatever, all so are these all like undergraduate students or
no?
They're not?
No, you no, that requires years of training. It's very expensive. But you can work in a BSL 2 or a BSL 1. There's 4 levels of biosafety labs. 4 is the scariest, where you have to have like your own air supply kind of thing. Or you're connected via a hose to an air supply, negative pressure, all this stuff. But BSL 1 and 2 are what you're most commonly going to find. And that's where you just need some basic training in order to get in there, but like how to not stab yourself with broken glass. Yeah, how to wear gloves and clean things. But that lab, the SEER lab, spatial epidemiological and ecology research, I think is what SEER stands for. They are recruiting students for our summer research program. You wouldn't be working in the scary lab or the really cool lab, depending on how you want to think about it. But they do have projects working with anthrax and brucellosis, those sorts of data. They're really cool.
So like the BSL like 3 and 4, like the really like
Intense.
contained kind of labs, would you say those are like more dangerous than just being like out in public because
Yes.
you got the very diseases in there, or is it statistically safer because you've got all the protective stuff, whereas like being out in public?
Oh, that's a great question.
Germs and stuff.
So you're always going to be taking on more risk in the lab, but you also have all the training in how to deal with it and mitigate that risk. So it's I think it's a wash. Yeah. They're working with really scary things that you might not encounter everywhere. Like if you're walking around on your day-to-day life, you're rarely going to encounter anthrax spores, depending on where you live. But if you're in that lab, then you're working with them. So. It's very safe. They are very safe in the lab, but they are working with these pathogens, so.
If you go back and tell your college and I'll tell you about it, what would you?
Oh. Be patient. There's a lot of things that feel like it has to be done right this second. And there's a lot of pressure to get a lot of things done. And I think that I became a lot happier as a graduate student when I realized that I wasn't competing against my classmates, my cohort mates. It was all of us competing against the system. And so there are flaming hoops that you have to jump through, right? You got to write a dissertation. You got to publish. You need to write grant proposals. And those, it wasn't me competing for this pot of money against like the other PhD students in the lab. It was us competing against the National Science Foundation. And I think that when I realized that, it was a lot of pressure and anxiety off of me. And I could see it when my cohort mates realized that as well, or if they didn't realize it. Yeah. But I also think if I were to go back further in time and give myself advice as a college student, it would be to take advantage of the resources that are available to you, like the DRC. So having extreme test anxiety, having panic attacks before every finals week, that's not normal. It's not healthy. It might be normal for some people, but it's not healthy. And there are things in place that can help you deal with that. So I wish that I would have gone and gotten my high anxiety taken care of or addressed for accommodations for testing, things like that, way, way sooner than like 2 years ago. Yeah, so take advantage of the resources that are here, right? Your tuition's already paying for it, might as well.
I have a question about just kind of research in general. So like I was looking at the summer program and they were mentioning like free credit.
Yep.
So as someone who like is kind of limited on where I can give those credits.
Yeah.
Are certain research labs, I guess, are the credits necessary? Because I don't mind doing the work.
Right.
It's just the credit side.
Yeah, so for our program in particular, this is our pilot summer. And so we know that a lot of majors have they've got their full credit, like 120 hours accounted for in your trajectory. And so we're willing to work with you on 0 to 3 credit hours. It's just that the time commitment that you are devoting to that research project is the same, regardless of the credit hours. But we know that with finances over the summer and with the amount of time that you have in your schedule for credit hours, signing up for all of that, we are aware of all of those things. And so if you wanted to participate and you're accepted into a lab, then you and I would work together to figure out, do you sign up for 1 credit hour over the summer or 3? What does that look like on your transcript? For other opportunities, there are volunteer opportunities, not ideal because you're getting the experience, but it's not completely accessible for everybody. There are paid opportunities, few and far between perhaps, but great things because you get paid for it and you're getting experience. And then the credit hour opportunities, I think I would want to say that most of those opportunities would work with you on how many credits you sign up for. But I only sort of know what happens in my department. But we can be flexible if you want to come and hang out in geography over the summer.
This might be a good last question to end on. Michael Casanueva asks, what advice do you have for building close relationships with faculty when professors are so busy and have hundreds of people in their classes simultaneously?
Yeah, come see us. Office hours are fantastic times to get to know your professors, right? I know that going to your professor's office can be really intimidating, can be really scary, right? If I have to go find somebody else's office, that to me, as one of their colleagues, is still intimidating. And just taking advantage of that time, right? Those are hours where your professor has said, I am available to you for you to use us as a resource. It doesn't mean that you have to schedule something. It doesn't mean that you have to come in with specific questions. It doesn't mean that it has to be about the course. So most of us, I would want to say all of us, but probably most of us, are super excited to actually talk to you like real life humans and have you recognize that we're also real life humans. Some people don't realize that at all. And just getting to know us more as people will really help, when you need to ask for letters of recommendation down the line. So if we can remember you, have that personal connection a little bit more, it helps us write better letters of recommendation, which is where I think that question is coming from perhaps. And so things like going to office hours, sending emails to follow up on comments that we leave on assignments or homework or that sort of thing. Always a good idea. We want you to be successful. We're not here to stand in your way, even though it might occasionally feel like that.
On that note, can we give a big thank you to Dr. Hamerlinck for joining us?
I am available via email, or you can swing by my office in Turlington, if you can navigate Turlington. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you want to apply for our summer research program, I'm that program coordinator for this summer, so I'm happy to answer any questions and try and convince all of you to be geography majors. Thanks, everybody.
You.